Hey Soul Sparklers, it's all happening.
With the soul sparkle, soul sparkle. With the soul sparkle.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Sparkle Living Show. So excited to have you with us today and to be joined by my dear friend and one of my favorite people on the planet, Ian. Welcome to the show, Ian.
Thank you, Hayley. It's good to be a guest on your wonderful show. Thank you so much.
You know, one of the things that our listeners need to know is that the theme song that we rolled into this show was created by you, which is super special.
I know that was 10 years ago, right?
10 years. We're coming on our 10-year anniversary. So it has been a minute. And it's so cool to have you here today because of all the people that had like a front row seat to all of this, you were right there front and center watching the magic unfold when we did all of our first events and everything, which is super fun.
Yeah, it's beautiful to look back on the importance of planting the seeds, right?
And being able to watch your journey too has been really just so inspiring. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because I think so many of us have all these big dreams and all these wild ideas. And you're one of the people that I think no matter how wild it is, you just go for it. I think that's so cool. And I want to dive in a little bit to your story because you've got so many passions and so many paths that I've seen you take in just our 10 years of knowing each other. And I know there's so much more to it, but your music career, you're a singer-songwriter, you play how many instruments? Is it like 9, 7, 9?
Playing them and playing them well is, two different things. But yeah, a dabbler of many, but, guitar and singing is really the foundation.
Multi-talented. That's the main thing. And then also just the creative space that you walked into with your art and the merging of those. And I think you've started to create such a beautiful opportunity to bring all the things that you are passionate about into one life. And I think it's so beautiful how you've done that. Do you want to share a little bit about what has inspired this most recent project that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Project, because I think for those of us that are inspired by, big ideas and ways to be of service, you've created an entire life of being of service in such a beautiful way. So I'd love for you maybe to share a little bit about the project and then what also kind of was your journey and path to get to where you are now with it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, service is so key, and really starting as an artist and musician, service isn't really the emphasis in the career. The industry doesn't really exhibit service necessarily as a core focus. There's other elements that tend to distract that. And so I'm grateful that I was able to become a nurse, and that was thanks to my parents and that suggestion of being economically stable in a pursuit of the arts, which is a common tale. Especially if you want to do it on your own terms and you don't want to have to compromise in order to make a living with a creative endeavor. And so I'm grateful that kind of gave me the flexibility and autonomy to explore and have the freedom and permission to explore. And it also taught me the value of service in that regard, because I wouldn't have seen that kind of stuff, that kind of humanity, that raw window into mortality and suffering and change, if I hadn't walked into that field as a nurse. And so the artist in me was just watching all that and really thinking, like, what's the point? I can be here and witness all this pain and try to help as a professional, and then off I go to travel the world and soak it up and explore, and I think that's beautiful, but it felt like there was more. There was something to learn and contrast a little bit, to be like, wow, at the same time, there's the reality of beauty and hope and freedom, and also pain and suffering. That's all going on at the same time in the world, a window away. And so I was seeking something that merged those two worlds together, maybe not directly with the traveling and what I was experiencing as a nurse, but that whole perspective of suffering into hope, or pain into meaning, or change and learning. Those two harmony elements were just calling to me. And so, you knew me in my music prime. I was a songwriter and singer and traveler and just doing all the things with music. And that experience of going from medical nursing into hospice nursing was a big step in incorporating music into the bedside. And really, that foundation for what we're doing now of receiving story and receiving lessons and perspectives and transforming it into something tangible. In that case, it was a song. So for years, focusing on the music in that way was very foundational to what we're doing now with the nonprofit. I'd done visual art even before music. I've always done, the creation of an icon or an image out of a blank piece of paper. There was something so simple and poetic and attractive about that, because it all starts with this raw blank potential.
Right.
The blank slate, right? And it's like, that's all of us to a degree with every day of our lives. And we can create something onto that blank space with intention and material and all that we have. And so there was something in that metaphor I really felt connected to, and the choice to create. I think we all have that choice, and it looks different for everybody. Everyone's image in their lives, that painting, that expression looks different, but it's all unique and beautiful, and it has the potential to be incredible and absolutely them, absolutely you. So I really sought that as a craft. And then after so long of working in hospice, my mom had this idea. She said, "Hey, you've been doing art for so long. You've been receiving all this beauty from people in a very vulnerable place and creating inspiration. Why don't you do that with art?" And she suggested this pivotal connection that just changed the context of art for me for the rest of my life. She said, "Why don't you take cremation remains, the actual ashes of people, and blend it into an art medium? And with that context, create these portraits of remembrance for people who've lost loved ones." And I'd done portraits before many times for people, but that extra element, that extra ingredient, you could say, is what makes it beyond anything else, just spiritually and emotionally and physically. The context is beyond any other art form I've attempted to participate in my whole life. And the invitation was extended at first to people I was working with in hospice and in bereavement care after they'd lost their loved one. And I just extended the invitation, said, "Hey, we have this idea. Would this be helpful?" And so many people have said yes to that. And it's been an amazing process, because now, through the last 5 years, we've been developing it and refining it just as an art in itself. And in the beginning, there were people who were, a little like tentative to go to the emotional aspect. They just wanted a portrait of their mother, and they'd give me a photo and say, "Thank you, let me know when it's done." But I felt like there was this missing piece also, on top of the actual ashes as part of the medium, there's that welcome to explore what that means, for that person. And so since I've studied more grief counseling and became certified as a grief counselor, and wove all that hospice experience into really holding space for people and integrating that process of reflection and connecting that intention to their own remembrance and the lessons and the love that are carried forward from their loved ones into themselves and into their lives, so that the creation of this portrait at the same time we're going through this process is filled with so much more depth. And then when they receive that reflection in the art form, it's not just an art piece, it has their heart in it, and it has all the things that they shared through me into this artwork that they now will have for the rest of their lives, and hand down the stories and the relic of the art through generations. And so many people have just been so brave and willing to explore that part of their journey. And I find that having the creative end is a very key component to working through grief, because we need to discover meaning, and creation contains a bridge between us and the rest of the world and to life itself. And art has always been that icon of that meaning. You're exhibiting something that has a story, that has context, and is personal. And many times in the grieving journey, in our culture especially, isolation and unworthiness and noise keeps us from really connecting from a place of vulnerability. And so this art and this process has been a way to empower people to have a platform to share proudly of their loved one, and not withholding because of, "I don't want people to feel awkward about my pain. I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to bring the room down." Instead, it's connecting the reality of the loss, accepting it fully, and remembering the beauty and the foundation of that life that still lives on in them and in the influence that that person had in them and in life, and to really celebrate that. And the artwork then becomes a talking point. People can have friends over for dinner and they're like, wow, what an interesting piece of art. Tell us about it. Well, that's actually my husband, or that's actually my mother. Literally, all the stories and wow that comes from that moment is so different than just saying, sorry about your mom. I heard your mom died.
Right.
Because we don't know many times how to approach grief.
I think really.
Well, it's tricky because it's hard not to go back to what we've always heard as the right thing to say or the appropriate thing to say, that many times people find somewhat unhelpful. It's not handled with that presence and momentum. It is that holding space. And it's also this call to reflect further and not just stay in the sadness. We tend to just feel like, well, this is it. And grief really isn't something you get rid of.
Right.
As we've heard from all these people, it's not just here's a pill and it's gone. It's something you have to integrate and transform and transcend.
And it sounds like what you're doing is just that with people. You are helping them integrate it versus trying to be separate from it, because you'll never be separate from it. It will go with you the rest of your life in some form or another. So how beautiful that you've been able to capture almost like an alchemy, like you could help them alchemize the process, alchemize the grief into beauty. Like you said, to be able to share the story, because I've always heard that most people would like to be invited to share stories of their loved one versus it's frowned upon. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. But I think people want to talk about it because it helps them remember. You're creating that space in a really beautiful way for that to happen, right? And it's such a gift, such a blessing. It's got to be a healing on some level for them as well, emotionally, right? To go through that process with you, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's part of the tangibility of it, I think, that makes such a movement with people when they're willing to participate in the 30-day commitment to what we're doing. We offer it through the foundation and it's free of charge for people. So really their only commitment is to show up and to trust their growth and to trust that there is beauty in there beyond the pain of the loss. And it's been amazing to see people so willing. They sit in front of that journal and they do one question every day and they just see what comes from it. And then every weekend on Sundays, we share and we have a one-on-one for 4 weeks and we just explore what comes up in those moments of searching. And it's hard sometimes. These questions are meant to bring things forward that you naturally don't want to go to because it may be too painful at the time. But when people are ready, that's the key. It's the readiness of stepping into it without being completely certain. There is a creative wonder to healing as well as art. And I try to encourage that because we really don't know what is influencing us beyond our sight. And I feel that through this work, there has been this very special reverence for that and to surrender into that, and an invitation to actually ask for guidance in a prayer. And some beautiful little moments that come from that, surprising things, signs and suggestions and epiphanies and just beautiful things that you just can't really quite quantify rationally because they just arrive. And really, speaking as an artist, that's really where some of the most beautiful things come from, is the reception and the openness and the humility and getting yourself and all the busy thoughts and the mind of you out of the way of your heart.
Sure.
Yeah. And so it's been wonderful to be a companion to these people in that regard, to be like, let's just see what comes of it. And then something always does. And we don't have specific expectations because we treat it all as it's going to manifest as it needs to. And all the art is a surprise. And so they don't see it as it's being created. And we wait until the very, very end and we do a grand reveal. And that's also a metaphor of we don't usually know what's happening as we're progressing through this healing journey when we're in it. We only really get it when we come to certain points. And the artwork is a symbol of one of those points. It's not the end of the journey by any means, but it is a huge step because they've stepped forward greatly and they've surrendered some of the most precious material in existence, honestly.
Yeah. It feels just like such a sacred and like holy journey to walk beside them through that, What a
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah, it is. It is such a gift. It's such an honor to do this and to learn also, and to share those lessons and to celebrate them, and to tell their stories, through the foundation for the donors who support the program. We share a story every month, and it's a way for these people to also carry forward in their reflections, that they know that their openness and their willingness has the potential to inspire others who are seeking clarity in their own journeys and looking for a beacon. And I think the more of that we have, the more light that we're bearing in darkness collectively, better. And really what we're trying to do every year, I just imagine it in my mind, and it's just going to be such an amazing thing. Hopefully in the spring next year. It's our 1 year mark since we started. And I want to invite everyone who's participated to bring their artwork, to have the foundation be able to supply all the means to have everyone get there from all across the United States and to just be there together physically and present their artwork to the community and their stories together, and to look at each other and to look at each other's art, and for the community to look at the art, to hear the stories, and for everyone to be so seen. Really, I think the being witnessed is such an important part of healing, and to feel totally accepted and heard through this experience is so important. And so I think this annual goal of this gallery is so symbolic of the deeper intention. We're all participating in our own experiences, but collectively, together, we can have such an impact on the world and humanity. I have faith.
Absolutely. And I think too, what you're creating is a community of people that have gone through a similar experience, similar shared experience, and you're bringing them together in a way to just remind them that they're not alone, and I think so many people in the world right now just feel really, really alone through whatever circumstances that they are going through. So I think, you're creating something that is so layered and so lovely to where people know that they're part of something bigger, and that they can share the story of their loved ones and whatever that might look like and their legacy and so on. It's a beautiful way to honor them. And I'm so excited for where you're headed with the way that you're touching lives, because it's really beautiful, really beautiful.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to share the story. It's an honor to participate in this work as well. And I feel my duty is not just the facilitator, but as the ambassador of really what's possible for people, and how such a pivotal, momentous experience as loss can be, on one hand, the most difficult experience of a person's life. And it can also, from what I've seen, be the most liberating.
Right.
And that's a road, to get to that pain to freedom. And it's beautiful to see how similar and different it is for everybody. We all share this inevitable circumstance. We're all here to live and die. And we're all here to love and to lose to some degree. And when you embrace that, I feel it really informs how to love and how to live and how to show up every day and how to step into your most authentic life while you have the chance, and to be that example for others, so that when you cross over beyond your mortal form, those left behind will have beautiful things to hold on to. And there will be pain because you've been loved, but you've also taught and given and empowered those that are left behind with everything you got every single day. And
everything we got.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really a beautiful meditation every day. It's akin to the old Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, and all these guys who were like, "Hey, life and death, it's the only two things we can really count on in life. So how to meditate on it in a way that's constructive and not just, the pointless, sad truth of how everything must end, because that isn't exactly true in my experiences. It just changes. It doesn't end per se. It doesn't just turn into oblivion. We're learning with science, nothing really disappears.
Just
And that's another metaphor. The art is a change in form. And That
Right.
exemplifies that truth. That truth,
Yeah.
it is true. We see it, and we can get it and integrate that into what that means to inform us through these challenges. I think that that's a really big step for people, and it's just like an aha type of moment. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's so beautiful, Ian, how, you're one of when I think about people that follow their calling and answer the call and have all of these, inherent talents and gifts. And I kind of said it a little bit before, but just the way that you have answered that call and brought those passions forward. I think we all have gifts and talents that we're given. And sometimes it takes us a little bit longer to figure them out, to figure out a way to incorporate them into our lives. And I love that at such a young age, because I'm such an elder now, you were able to bring those through into your life so beautifully and so magically, and to watch you weave them all together in a way that now has created this experience. It's been so lovely to watch your journey. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts or any wisdom around how people can tap more into like the truth of who they are, their calling, and what advice you might give our listeners for how you were able to really give yourself permission to just to go for it and say yes every day, be disciplined enough to create the level of excellence and the level of service. Really, I guess it goes back to that, following your heart, your calling. Do you have any thoughts around what you would share with the audience around that part?
Yeah, I think it's difficult for us in this day and age not to compare ourselves to other windows of success or how you should be, or a cultural expectation or a societal expectation or any expectation within an external environment. I think that having the support, encouragement, and love to really find that inner voice and to listen to it and to trust it, not just be like, well, that's not going to pay the bills. Well, not as good as that guy. Well, I'm too old. Well, I should have started when I was 5. Just all these thoughts of doubt and questioning and comparing and sabotage can come in. And they still do for me. They still float in, especially with all these new experiences and responsibilities of marriage and fatherhood and family and, just all the things that tend to arrive when you need to be pushed again. And it's just a process of coming back to that space, that quiet place of listening and being honest, really striving for truth at whatever cost and whatever pain and whatever mistakes that need to be corrected, maybe, because we still have the gift of life. You have the ability to look at your life and assess it. You're still alive.
Right.
That's so powerful. And I think we forget that. I know I do. I can feel like, I don't know what to do, and it's just the sense of despair can come in. But then you just kind of can realize that, God, I'm alive. What?
Wow.
Yeah, that's a wow moment. And we don't really treat it as a wow moment every single day. And I hope we could learn to. It's something I tend to take for granted, just personally living. And I feel just immensely blessed to be welcomed into such dark places in the world, to be a companion to death, a companion to loss. And that's even something you can get used to,
Right.
You can get jaded to that. You can get desensitized. You can try to, block it out because it is painful.
Yes.
Now, there's a lot of grief as a participant that comes with that field. But I feel just when I share about burnout and other things that caregivers tend to experience when they're when they are submitted to all this intensity, you have to find a way to process these things, and let it teach you something. And for me, that's, I think, been a part of this whole journey, like of how to stay true to the course. And you may make mistakes. You may believe some lies that you've been telling yourself for a long time that go way back, that might be foundational to your upbringing. You just don't realize some things until you're at a certain point in the journey and you are faced with this crossroads again, being, wow, do I carry on the way I've always carried on? Or do I take the higher road of truth, even though it's more painful and uncertain because it's not the comfortable thing I've been doing for my whole life? You can continue in this path of expansion. And I feel those gifts that have been with me for my whole life have been anchors to explore. And I think we all have ways of moving through the world, whether that looks like an actual craft or if it's something more intuitive and it's more personal and interpersonal. Everyone's got a gift and a strength and a beautiful thing to bring forward with the core of who they are. And really, I think that there's no real recipe for everybody that you can just say, hey, this is the trick. This is easy. If you do this, it's gonna be tough. And that's part of life. That's a beautiful, maddening part of life is it's hard many times. It's easy too, many times, but it's this balance of shadow and light. A metaphor I like to bring up in the artwork of people really comment on the detail and the realism and the feeling of life. How I've strove to express that in the excellence of the craft is how to evoke this sense of light and life in a drawing, a painting. And really, people are like, what's the secret to that? And I'm like, it's embracing all the darks and all the lights.
Well, isn't that just like the thing?
Yeah,
That's it. It's
that's
all the
it.
darkness and the light.
That's how you can really see clearly. You have to have the contrast of all the spectrums from the deepest shadows you carry, the
Mhm.
darkest of the dark, the blackness of the stuff you don't want to look at, or maybe you can't even see because it's so dark, into the beauty of the brightest part of you, the core of your essence and love. And all of that can be present.
Yes.
It all is. And we can choose to see it or not. And I know from experience, I haven't wanted to see all the darks, That's hard stuff to come to terms with. That's shameful stuff sometimes. And we just don't feel like it serves any purpose. So we're just going to keep it tucked away and out of the way as long as possible until it's revealed in little ways in life. And it's huge pivotal moments like loss and faced with death. These are the moments where everything comes forward. All the hidden things in the closet, all the things that were swept under the rug, all the things that were kept in the box. And it's all material. It's all a medium to create with, in my perspective and my metaphor. It's exemplified in the visual art form as you have to have the spectrums of all these shades of our lives and ourselves to work with. And that's how you can get the nuance and the subtlety and the understanding.
Yeah.
And the expression and the compassion and the connection with people, that they can look at you because of all that you've brought forward and all these spectrums of tone, and they'll say, wow, I see you. I see myself. That's the namaste. Now that's the identification of yourself with another, is how truly you can come forth. And so I think that as you're exploring, to go back to your question, learn to be creative with all those shadows and all that light. Weave it all together honestly and bring it forward as you. This is the only thing you've got really is you and the choice to be you and the choice to give of yourself and to choose life and all that entails, which is the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I think the more that you can step into that without fear, the sooner powers that be and all the forces that compose this universe can start using you well. And that's when you're available. And that's when you're no longer afraid. And that's when you can be exactly who you are.
That's what the world needs.
That's what that's what the world needs. Tell me about it. Need
Well-being, just exactly.
bravery. Right.
Your bravery. And I think too, so many of us were, you grew up in a school system or some kind of system, right? Whatever it might look like, where we're almost taught that if it's not perfect, then you shouldn't do it, right? Like it has to be perfect or you're going to fail, or just all these beliefs that a lot of people, I think, grew up with that are actually not true at all, but it limits their capacity to express themselves creatively because they're afraid of what other people would say or because it won't be perfect. But I think that's the beauty of kind of this conversation. It's more just encouraging you to just do the thing that you feel drawn to do and trust that however it comes out is perfect, right? Like whatever it is, it's going to be exactly what it needs to be, whether it's defined perfectly by society or not. And I think you are an example of just going for it and figuring it out along the way and perfecting your craft over time to where it does feel like you are just creating beauty in all the ways, always in all the ways. whatever medium it is, whether it be music, art, this particular project of art that is a whole other layer of depth and beauty. But just, I think giving ourselves permission, like you said, to be brave and just try the things that we're drawn to. And it's never too late. It's never too late to. I have a dear friend that became an artist at 40
Hmm.
because she wanted to create something lovely for my birthday present. She was like, "What do you get your best friend for her 40th birthday? It has to be profound, you know?" And so she created this painting for me, and now she's a professional artist and has been for 10 years. I mean, it's just
Wow.
crazy. Something can inspire you. And like you said, it's never too late to begin. It's never too late until it is. So what are we waiting for? So the question
Yeah.
is, what are you all waiting for?
Or is it permission? Is it money? Is it time? Is it expectation? There's so many questions you can ask, and many times it's us that are in the way. From just starting small. You don't have to be this big thing, that's the expectation of comparison and all this that cripples the creative muse. I love Gilbert's book, Big Magic, it's just really resonate with that humility of being the vessel and being the listener, being the witness, the servant to something far more mysterious, intangible, and powerful than we can imagine. Receiving it with gratitude, with gratitude, not pride, not attachment. Now, not this is my thing. This is my little thing that I'm doing. You are the thing that's moving the thing. You are the vessel that is needed. It's a responsibility when you see it in that regard. It's almost like, how can I afford not to? When you see it like that, it's like, I am so needed for this specific call that's waiting for me to get out of the way and just do the thing. And that comes from honoring it as what I believe it really is. It's not me. It's something coming through and behind and pushing and holding and saying, it's okay, just keep up the good work. Don't freak out. That's like what I'm hearing whispered in my ear, and just, okay, keep doing it. Don't give up. Don't stop. Don't turn the other way. Don't deny it. And you'll see that there's just amazing support waiting to flow through you and open you and come to your aid and encourage you, really.
Yeah, it's so interesting because when you were talking about that coming through, all I'm thinking of is like so many times we let our little human self get in our way and be like, "You're not good enough. You can't do it." But your divine self, like your holy self, the God within you, wants to come through you.
Mm.
Form you by your design is meant for it to come through you, right? And so many times we block that flow, that creativity, because like we said, what if we doubt ourselves or our talent or whatever? But I think every time that I have followed I call it, like you follow the breadcrumbs a little bit, and you just kind of think, wow, wouldn't it be cool if, and that's how most of my days start, wouldn't it be amazing if we could blah, 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 whatever it is. And that's when I have found myself, and you and I have talked about this over the years, like you start to find yourself on like a magic carpet ride. Like it really feels like it's just one synchronicity into one more experience, one more conversation, one more connection, to where just by taking one step into a project, a passion, something that lights you up, following that highest excitement truly does lead you to what I've experienced as the most fulfilling, most magical, most like miracles happen for me when I just trust that inner knowing. So I think for anyone that's listening that is maybe feeling a little stuck or a little not as inspired, and I agree with you, Big Magic was really a huge aha moment. It's like we just need to follow what's the most exciting thing you could think about creating right now, and then maybe you invest a little bit into some of the things and you can just kind of play and get started. You don't have to trick out a whole studio, right? Yet of all the stuff, right? But just allowing yourself to get in there and get your hands dirty a little bit and see what lights you up and then see what beauty you can create. Why
Well
not?
said. Why not? And why? There's such huge whys behind why you should. It's your life.
Yeah. And I actually think the longer, let's see, what do I want to say? The way that the world is going right now, I think we are truly stepping into a whole new way of living and loving and serving. And I think that more and more people will go back to this creative process, this more simplicity, more ease, more grace, hopefully less technology, that kind of thing, more connection, more community. That's a lot of the conversations that I've been having on this show typically is around just things are going to shift, and they always do, And so being open-hearted, open-minded, and not attached, like you said earlier, not being attached to what the outcome looks like and just trusting that you're going to be guided into the thing that you need to be doing, which is, again, circling full to where you are now. All of the experiences, all the travels, Ian, all those wild gypsy adventures and all the music and all of the storytelling captured you in a way and molded you and created your heart into what it is now. All of the compassion, all the empathy, and all the sadness and suffering you witnessed, you are truly creating beauty from ashes, truly. And that's just what a blessing that you are personally to the world, but also to this foundation that you've created, to the families that you have touched, for the legacy that you're leaving and that you're encouraging them to leave as well, I think is so, so lovely. So thank you for the work that you do in the world and who you are.
No, thank you. And I really feel like that realization of how we're moving forward as a people on the planet, there is this, I think, vacuum being created that needs simplicity, and it needs intimacy, and it needs tangibility, and it needs each other. And we're faced with that crossroad of like, well, we can use technology, become more efficient in every way possible, except for actually how to deal, right? It's like we can do the work and automate all this stuff. It's the new industrial age in a way. And we're left with this humanity that we can't just fix like that. It requires space and intention and connection with each other. And really, like, when I started, before we really simplified this process to the way it is now, I had some well-meaning friends say, hey, you should really try to scale this. You should push all the technology you can to really make it streamlined and quick and all the things. And I don't know if this just is my little Libra in me or whatever, but I'm like, I just want to take all that and go the complete opposite direction with that, the pendulum and the complete opposite side of the clock, because I feel like because that narrative is so forefront, it's all about efficiency and speed and the hustle. This deep need of slowness and attention and stillness and story is so present in my heart. And it's like seeing it on the canvas already. I'm like, this is what I need to bring to the world and help people find. And in a crazy world where there's so many solutions and so much noise and so many things vying for our precious attention, ourselves in that stillness is left to compete with that.
It's like, that's the only thing. I mean, the essence and the truth of you cannot be automated. It cannot be digitized. It has to be real. It has to be raw. It has to be authentic, and it has to have the depth in order to create the kind of connection that I think people are already craving. They are in desperate need for deeper conversations and connections, and just being able to be real and raw. And obviously with your work, you see that whole, like, the truth of who they are in their grief and the beauty of that, right? And I think that we have an opportunity, and it's funny because, just for those that are listening, Ian and I have not really we haven't chatted in a few years, right? But it's so that we're like we're at the same place with it, because I'm the same. I'm doubling down with in-person stuff. I want heart to heart and belly to belly. I want fireside chats and magic that happens when we come together in real life. And so I think it's interesting that you're also on that same vibe, of course, not separate. It's just funny how in sync we are on that, because I'm with you.
I think when you're listening, the same type of things seem to come through to many people at once. It's really fascinating to me, exemplified by where we're at right now today. It's like we haven't talked in years. I mean, little bits of, hey, this is going on and see you later, it's little updates. But as far as like the overarching underbelly, you know, of all the things that we're doing, we're seeing similar needs. And the more I connect with other people and in similar hearts, you know, they see the same. And I feel honored to be aware of certain needs like that and to just realize that it's very important to serve that while we're evolving together as humanity with the world, with life itself in all its forms. You know, it's like we are hopefully growing. And I think in many ways we are. And I want to contribute to that with everything I've got to be a part of the growth.
Let's do it. I love it. Thank you so much, Ian, for being willing to have this conversation, to, share your vision and mission. I want to make sure that for anyone that is listening that would like to connect with Ian, we will have your website for the Ash Rose Project. And whether that be as a client, as a donor, as a supporter, collaborator, whatever the thing is, if you feel drawn to this work, we would love for you to be part of your mission. So I'll make sure to have that link in the show notes. Sound
Well,
good?
yeah, thank you. And yeah, you know, it's always an invitation to witness the sometimes difficult things. You know, this isn't an easy topic for people to approach usually, but you know, for the people that have really been involved with this work and a part of the circle of witnesses, you know, it's an honor to stand with people to watch the truth unfold and the beauty that can come from fully participating in celebrating the truth and through the pain, through the sadness, through all that that brings up, you know, that connects us all in a very special way. And it's been magical, for lack of a better word. I think that is the word.
Always the word.
Yeah.
That's always in my world. I love it. Thank you again for all of you that are listening today and in the future and from now until the end of time. We're so thankful to be on the journey with you. And Ian, thanks so much again for being here. And if this episode resonates with you, we'd love for you to share it. Maybe send some comments, some feedback so we know that we're on the right track. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Soul Spark Living.
With the soul sparkle.